We're meeting with a leader who's redefining what it means to build a successful business. Gemma Comabella, she walked away from the corporate world to build something meaningful. Gemma is originally from Barcelona, but she's been based in Berlin for over 15 years now. She's part of a community of over 150,000 Spanish who've made Germany their home over the past 2 decades, all looking for opportunities. And Gemma found hers in retail. She started at Zalando when there were just 80 people, watched it grow to over 10,000. Then Vestiaire Collective, where she became the first country manager hired outside of France. She knows how to build. She saw a gap in the market and is now taking the opportunity to build something on her own terms. You're from Barcelona. Tell us a little bit of growing up in such a different country or location than Germany and Berlin.
So yes, I was originally born and raised in Barcelona. I've been there until I finished my studies. And afterwards I decided to move to Germany as the business or working situation in Spain at that time was not so easy. And it was when I came here, I was lucky enough that Zalando was launching for the Spanish market. So it was the perfect moment for me to keep somehow my Spanish culture in a much colder place. But since then, I always say I've been Germanized. So I'm very punctual. I really like efficiency. I try to be on point on the things, how I say it, how I communicate. Really not much, not much time or not so much space for interpretation. So yeah, since then, and by now I've been 15 years in Germany. So I've worked all my life nearly here. I always only was 1 year in Spain. So I feel I'm...
And you've built a family as well.
Yes, exactly. And between building the companies and working here, I also met my husband and have 3 kids now.
The difference is, do you see a difference, or do you know anyone from Barcelona who's maybe on founder mode, and where you kind of share the differences between how it is to set up a company or start up a company in Berlin against Barcelona?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do have 2 Spanish investors. So I go relatively often. Ones are from Barcelona, the other ones are from Menorca. Mm-hmm. Lucky us.
Yes.
So and actually the Spanish community for the startup scene is huge also, and it's growing a lot. And there's a lot of people that dare to build something and that want to start this exciting adventure. But on the other hand, it is a bit different. Right? I think hiring, it has all pros and cons. Germany is a very bureaucratic country. I believe Spain also has some bureaucracy. I don't know if in the same level, especially the labor laws in Germany are very strict and complicated. But I mean, it's difficult for me. I don't know how it's exactly in Spain, but I would say that in Germany you have this culture also that it's very 9 to 5, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Like team is really divide their work-life balance. When I was working at Zalando, I remember, like my colleagues there, the other team members became also my friends because we were working there from 8 in the morning until 10 in the night, just because the Spanish culture is a bit different, right? We do not do these hard divisions. Mm-hmm. And here, while they do it, so you need to get used to it, and you reach the team from here to here. You normally put core hours, as there's team members that want to start working at 7 in the morning, and others that want to start a bit later. So for us, it's important to be between 9 and 4. That's our core hours, and then you can start earlier, or you can start a bit later, like 9:30. But then you're 8 hours working.
Is that difference between Berlin and other German cities, or is more or less the whole country similar?
That's a good question. I mean, I've worked only in Berlin base, so my previous companies are also here. I did have teams in Hamburg and in Munich, but I would say I don't think the culture is so much about the country per se. It's probably more about the company where we worked at, and on those cases it was always similar that as I have now.
I'm building a company culture. I did work in Germany for like 2 years, and coming from Barcelona, it would be company culture is a little bit, it's a Wednesday we all finish at 6, let's go have a beer. I came to Germany on a Wednesday, finish work at 6, everybody's gone. And when I say, let's go for a beer, they kind of look at me like, are you like alcoholic or what's wrong with you? So in what ways have you had to adapt your outgoing culture of Spanish, of going out for lunch with the team members, of the colleagues, going out for a beer after work, maybe every day? What is it that you need to adapt? What is it that you need to do to make sure that you have that closeness from the team and feel together?
So being Spanish, it's actually a great advantage in Germany because I think the Spanish culture is something that they really like. So for me, it's relatively easy to tell people, hey, let's go for lunch, or let's go for, wanna go for dinner. You need to plan sporadic. So being so sporadic, it's not the strength of the Germans, but I would say it does work good, and they see it as something very valuable. So I always, they always embrace me to keep somehow my Spanish culture, and I'm still, right, for Germans, very loud and very extrovert, and sometimes a bit too much that we can talk about later, why a woman is always too much, but a guy tends to be on point or ongoing or like a good leader. But we can talk about that later. But yeah, I think it does work here, and I've never felt that I didn't fit in Germany.
Gemma, you've had a really good career working at different companies, corporations. What was the spark that made you decide, I don't want to follow the corporate ladder, I actually want to create something myself?
In my case, personally, aside that I saw there was a huge problem in the market, right, that I noticed that the idea could work because I had a personal problem that I thought I was a good person in order to solve it. Aside of this, I think it had a lot to do when I had kids. So I do have, I have 2 daughters and 1 son, and I come from a family where my dad was the one building the company, and my mom kind of supporting him. And I didn't want to have that. I wanted my daughters to see that you don't need to depend on any man, that females are able to build companies, and that it's very important to see a role model. There's not many female role models in until now, right? I think now there's much more going on. There's a huge culture. So now there's much more happening. But at that time when I started, I mean, not now, not when I started, when I was younger, right? There was not so many. And I think that was, for me, it was very important to show my daughter how that, yes, we can, and that we can build and become as successful as any other man.
Is that the source of your energy? For the good and the bad, right? So you've seen it from a point of view where it was your father. And I agree with you. During the time your father was CEO of a company, that really was a man's world. So is that where your energy is coming from in order to push forward your own ideas as a female leader? Or is it more pushing your own ideas for providing a service that actually makes sense for the consumer?
It's both. I think I'm personally very entrepreneurial. I'm someone very that wants to make a difference, that wants to change stuff, that doesn't stay with the status quo. So I think naturally it fitted me. I also probably have that from my dad. So this part of ambitious and to make something different and change the world to the best. And on the other hand, it was also very important to me to prove that good and business can go hand in hand. And therefore, when I saw there was an opportunity in the market, right, that we knew, I used to work as managing director for a furniture company. And in my market, we were making approximately, I imagine, 100 million GMB. Yeah. From those ones, we had approximately 10% returns. And from that 10%, around 60% of the items got damaged. So we were talking about around 6 million GMB, right, that I really didn't know what to do and how to focus about. And if you think how big the market is, the furniture market is a 222 billion market, then I thought, okay, there's actually a business opportunity linked to it. Me coming from secondhand and furniture, I thought I knew the problem, and I just needed the best team to execute with me.
Yeah. Has that always been your mission, or has it been growing through your career that you've identified the opportunity and then you said, that's the right moment to jump?
Completely. So I I think the idea or the mission of Coccoli, when I saw the opportunity, I decided to start because I never had, or I always wanted to build something by myself, no? This entrepreneurial spirit, but I think it was Coccoli that brought this spark to do something that it did make sense.
What about corporate life? Was that something that you liked?
So funny enough, corporate life I didn't find it was so bad. I did have managing director roles before with much bigger teams than I have now. And I always got along. I believe most of the times I always work in companies that were relatively in the early stages. So when I started at Zalando, there were like 80 people. Now there are like 10,000, and it's huge. But when I started, it was still very entrepreneurial. And when I was then at Vestiaire Collective, that's a marketplace for secondhand furniture, it was also, I was the first country manager hired. So they were really French. I was the first one that doing it. So it was always very at the beginning. And I think that's also what kept me, what worked for me in this corporate kind of life, that it was corporate, but even besides being corporate, it was still early stage.
The furniture market in Europe is over 200 billion a year, with Germany, the biggest in the continent, leading at 57 billion. But there's a shift happening. Re-commerce, the resale economy, is growing 20 times faster than traditional retail. In fashion, it's already mainstream. Vinted, Vestiaire Collective, Depop, and furniture is next. Second-hand furniture in Europe is a 46 billion market heading to 72 billion. Gemma saw this early, and she's building right at the center of it. Coccoli is a Berlin-based marketplace for furniture, founded in late 2021. Their model? Partner directly with brands to resell what they can't sell as new, helping them move stock that would otherwise be thrown away. They started with 200 pieces. Today, they have over 350,000 online.
Help me go through the process of how to start. So we were talking about it in the car. You were working at a company, you saw a gap on the market, you saw the opportunity. So how do you go from there to where you are now?
With people you trust, really. I think for me, how it all started is I knew there was this market opportunity, and then I called Greta and I asked her, look, I do think there's something here. So we started doing focus group and trying to understand the market. And then we saw, okay, it can actually work. It can actually work unit economics. It can actually be a profitable business that, as I mentioned before, we even do good. That's the whole goal, right? It's not building per building. It's actually building for something that we do care about. So I called Greta, we did the focus group. Then we actually talked to Frank because we knew that for furniture, logistics were such a key part of the area of the business. So Frank also came on board. And then the first part was, okay, how do we get investment? It was a different time, to be fair. It was in 2021. Mm-hmm. The time investment it was in a different moment as now. Now you probably need to already have started. You need to have market product fit. In our case, it was relatively easier. We were 3 founders with pretty good track record. We already had experience. We knew each other. So basically, we built a business case and a PowerPoint and convinced investors to join us. So that's how our pre-seed started. Then we had the cash. And then the question was, well, now how do we build this up? And first of all, it was legal. I'm Spanish, living in Germany. I do speak German, but not legal German. And find a lawyer that tells you what's a term sheet, what's liquidation preference, what is a shareholders agreement, right? So it was really from scratch to understand the terms. And once that was done, we had the cash, we had the team, or the very small team. Mm-hmm. Then we just went all through. We started talking to brands. We told them, hey guys, what are currently you doing with the items you cannot sell anymore as new? And they didn't know what to do. They were selling it to jobbers for around 10% of the recommended retail price. And we told them, we'll give you more money, we'll take care of your brand, and it's gonna be effortless. And we had in one month, we had 600 items online. By now we have 350,000. We have more than 600 brands we work with. So it really was scaling up very quickly, which proved also that it did make sense.
Now you know it makes sense, right? And now it's easy for you to kind of go, everyone, I was right. But at that moment when you're asking for money, how many hoops do you need to jump to convince unknown people of your vision in order to get money so you can actually start?
So I was very lucky because, as I mentioned, I came from companies where I used to work with the founders from the beginning. So those founders I was in the company with, they decided to invest. So they were my first angels. And of course, having your old bosses putting money in your company already gave me the beginning start, who were also very successful founders. For example, the Vestiaire Collective founders, Vinted founder. So we had really strong names already that joined us, and that already helped, of course, as they do, to get the rest ongoing, as it's a lot of trust, right? If you're an investor and you tell to your friend and you're investing yourself, then more of your friends will want to invest.
Yeah. So what is Coccoli?
Coccoli stands for Community of Conscious Living, and we are a marketplace for second-hand, called second stock, or almost new items. So furniture market, furniture items. We're a verticalized marketplace. So we do only sell furniture, and we mostly work with brands and resell everything they cannot sell as new, as exposition pieces, returns, old collection, production with slight damages.
Okay, so it's not second-hand per se, someone individually, personally used it, they put it online. It's more those unused from the shops, from the brands that they've been using it to showcase or as on the shop, they not sell it, and then it goes to you.
Exactly. So our goal is to partner with brands and to be their end-of-life partner for these almost new items.
Yes.
We do also have an area that's C2C. So you also can, as a private person, upload your items, and we will take care of the full logistics. But that's not our core business.
Yes.
Yeah.
What makes you different?
What makes us different? So I think there's two main areas, or how we call it, it's our secret sauce. Has two ingredients. The first one is our supply. So the items that we acquire at Coccoli are unique. You cannot find them in any normal shop, right? Or new shop. And because we work with the brands, we also are able to collaborate with them. Means we have a very close relationship, and we know that the items that they are selling are originally from this brand, right? That's the first part. The second part that's very unique is the logistics and the operations. So we have different models depending on the brand's needs. We have our own warehouse also that we manage, and therefore we can be as convenient as what up to now the jobbers were doing, right? That they would just take a truck without knowing what there was inside, but it was a effortless situation. They would get the truck, move it, sell it. We can do exactly the same for the brand. So we have the whole logistics and this digitalization of these jobbers, like old kind of job.
So what's sustainability? Because I'm totally external from your industry, from your business. And I see a lot on your website for sustainability is important. But what does it actually mean?
So did you know that every year 11 million tons of furniture end up in the landfill? And you will say, what's 11 million tons? Well, that's the same weight as 1,000 Eiffel Towers. 1,000 Eiffel Towers. That's a huge amount of waste that ends up in the landfill that we need to stop, because there's no planet B, right? So we need to make sure there's a reduction of the waste that we as humans are producing.
What does that waste come from? What do you mean? Is that from people that are throwing away the furniture, or is it from companies that are not selling and they don't know what to do?
It's everything.
It's everything.
Basically, most of the times, what happens when you buy a new sofa? What happens with your old sofa?
Yeah.
Right? You don't know what to do. So imagine if when you buy a new sofa, the company where you buying the sofa would ask you, hey, should we take care of your old sofa? And that's where we are. That's how Coccoli works with them. We would not only work with the brand, but we also can work with the private customer in order to resell that item that cannot be sold as new. And of course, a lot of the times, imagine an item Spanish brand ships an item to a German customer. The German customer wants to return the item, but they only have a warehouse in Spain. Moving such a big item from Germany to Spain, unit economics would not work. It would be unprofitable. So that's also where we stand by. We say the brands, don't worry. We're still going to make you have a new revenue stream thanks to Coccoli. Because if not that item, they would probably have thrown it because it's cheaper to throw it
than to actually store it.
Yeah, exactly, and to sell it. So that's where we come in. And I think that's the goal we're having is to reduce this amount of items that could be in perfect condition, that are totally usable, that maybe have just some scratches, but also you have kid yourself, right? Yeah. I mean, how long does a sofa or a table work in perfect condition, right? It's completely fine to have something that has just some slight damages or something, and I think you can totally live with it, and is part of the charm and of the story of the item.
So I'm still staggered. I'm still staggered about the 11 million tons. How do you get that data? Because my thought would be, I have an old sofa. Usually, my point, right? I don't know how other people are, but usually I have a sofa until it's pretty much falling down, and you just dump it. You cannot resell it. No one's gonna buy it, right? So really use it to the maximum. So how are you controlling that data? Is it just people, is it the government? Is it the local authorities that's measuring the furniture that's being thrown away? Because my thought, I don't know if it depends per country, is when you throw whatever furniture you're using, usually it's being either reused or they're trying to recycle it in a certain manner. But the way you're saying is pretty much, no, it just goes to the trash. No one's doing anything about it.
Yes, so when you think about a sofa, right, and you think, yeah, there's the wood and there's the textile, but there's glue a lot of times in between. So not all the materials can actually be used. Nevertheless, when you have a sofa and you say, I'm throwing it after X years, well, there's probably still pieces that we could actually reuse to make another sofa that has another piece that's also damaged, but not the overall. So, there's a lot of extra pieces that we could use in the different items. So that's also part to reduce the amount of waste, right? And the data comes from studies. So there's several studies online. I'm not making up the data. You can see it online.
Of course.
And it is the amount of tons of furniture that are expected. And this is currently the expectations of growth. So currently, second-hand furniture is around a 32 billion market, but it's expecting to grow up to 56 billion in the upcoming years, until 2028, if I'm not wrong. So imagine how this would multiply if there's no company like us that actually supports and makes secondhand as easy as buying new. And that's our goal, right? When you ask, what's Coccoli? Well, our mission is to make secondhand your first choice. And that's the only way to do it, is to making it as easy, as affordable, and quicker, and just better.
Of course, you're focusing in certain brands that really care about the quality of the furniture they build. And where I'm going with this is, you have the IKEAs, very large. I don't want to put anyone there, but IKEA doesn't make the most respectable, let's say, highest quality. They have some, but they have a very entry, cheap level of furniture, which usually you're not really selling secondhand.
Well, but IKEA, what they have is actually they actually have second hand.
Yeah,
you can actually sell your
yes.
things in their shops. And I think that's a great step. Someone as big as IKEA that's making second hand available for everyone. They also have a lot of pieces that is very standardized. So as you said, right, you have a sofa and the legs are damaged. Well, but maybe we still have the textiles or the arms that we can reuse. So I think everyone needs to do as much as they want. There's a lot of current new rules and legislations coming up. It's called waste management. The design of the items have to be much more ecologically and designed for the longer term, because companies from 2026 are obliged to take care of the end of life of their items.
Good.
Right? So there's a lot of change going on. There's much more people thinking about it. How can we make it last longer? Currently, the lifespan of a sofa is 5 to 8 years. So it's not so long if you think about it. And of course, my goal is to make sure we reduce the waste. And if the items can last longer, we always have ways to change pieces to support this part and be part of the companies, and also be able to report on their ESG's data, right? So there's a lot of like areas or parts that need to somehow work together in order to make the legislation work.
Is that adapting the demographics? I don't know where we fall on the age and generations, etc. But are you seeing that the new generations are more, at least the feeling is like new generations are looking more for sustainable second-hand. They're more open than, let's say, the generation above us, where buying new was, let's say, the normal thing, buying new. Do you see that in your business, that it is depending on the type of generation?
I love this question. Exactly about that. I think we need to go to this systemic change. It cannot be just about us making sure we buy secondhand because it's the cool thing. Secondhand needs to be seen in your head as the normal, because circularity has stories, because circularity can also make is as good as new. And that's what what the new generation shows. For the new generation, I was talking about my daughter, but she's very little. But you know, I think for them it's so obvious. There's so much also in class, right? In the schools, they're already studying all about this. The other day I was also doing a podcast for the school of my daughter, who was asking me about sustainability and how do we actually introduce this, no, in the kids. Maybe I'm also a bit biased by the fact we live in Germany. Germany is, I would say, in Europe, pretty ahead in terms of recycling and secondhand and the use of the optimization of the use of the materials. But of course, I feel that that's hopefully what companies like Coccoli are doing, are helping to make, to get used that secondhand will be the first choice. Yeah,
I mean, there is a stigma, right, about buying secondhand on clothes and everything. But I know you're helping.
Do you think so? I think you have the stigma.
Yeah, but that's 100%. I do have a stigma personally about buying secondhand because I did grow up in a consumer society where it's no, you need to buying new is going to be better than buying secondhand, right? So I do still have the stigma. I live in Norway, where secondhand is Scandinavia secondhand. I do think they have done the change that secondhand goes first than buying new. So now I'm getting used to buying furniture, secondhand shops, and from NGOs, etc. But growing up, it was a stigma. Many countries that still seen that way. So where does the responsibility fall? Does it fall on the consumer? Does it fall on the brand and the company, or does it fall on the government? Maybe not who's to blame, but what's the right collaboration to really push that, like you say, second-hand should be the first option, not first-hand?
No, I remember when I used to work at Vestiaire Collective. Vestiaire Collective is a marketplace for second-hand luxury fashion. And I remember when I worked there, second-hand fashion represented, or luxury second-hand fashion represented 5% of the cake. By now, it's already 15%, and it's already growing. So I believe the problem comes from the fact that there was just no opportunity until when we were younger, right? I guess we're approximately the same age. So at that time...
I'm a bit younger.
Probably.
I'm kidding.
So at that time, what happened is that there was no second-hand options in the market. You had to go to a flea market. It was shady. You didn't know how it went. And you were actually even worried that the furniture would have these insects inside. You know?
But you know what? I actually found it cool, and that's something I miss, going to the flea markets. And that they kind of died away when we grew up. So my parents used to take us a lot of flea markets, and I found it really cool. And you would find all these discovery things. We both grew in Barcelona, right? So you had Los Encantes. That kind of disappeared. They're very, very nice, but it's more of a touristy spot. Now it went online with a new technology. So was it just us in that period, and we just had to wait until technology to come up again to kind of make it cool, because then nobody sees that you're buying secondhand?
No, I think actually secondhand has a charm, and I think by now a lot of people is super proud to say, hey, I bought this, but it's secondhand, and someone asks you where's it from, you say, hey, it's vintage. You know, it has this coolness linked to it. So I think that's been thanks to a lot of companies previous to Coccoli that have been doing a great job to get this cool factor into secondhand, into vintage. And I think the main problem was the assortment, right? If you go to a flea market or to a vintage shop, it's really nice, and I still love going there. But of course, the space you have is limited. While if you go online, I mean, as I mentioned, we have 350,000 items. How would I get that in any flea market, right? So I think it makes a big difference to have all this on one page as the one destination to find what you're looking for.
Sustainability, all good, I get you, but you're also building a business. Where do you find the balance between caring on sustainability, building a company that's good for the world, but at the same time, you need to make revenue?
For sure, and that's not contradictory. I mean, doing good and doing business is exactly the same thing for me. I mean, the company, we need to make sure that the money is unit economics profitable, since the first order, because furniture, different to fashion, does not have a repeat rate as high, right? If you buy a sofa, you'll have a sofa, and even if I show you sofas that you love, you would probably not buy a new one if you don't need it, right? So I cannot build the demand needs to exist, but therefore we just need to make it work from the beginning, and a lot has to do with volume and having the best prices for the customers, and also because of every time being bigger, being able to also negotiate better prices in terms of logistics, in terms of marketing, because we're more known, we have a higher brand awareness. And for us, I mean, what is key, it's like there needs to be patient money in the market, right? Of course, you will have SaaS company that does the VC dream, right? That is a 100x growth in 2 years. Awesome, yes, totally get it. It makes a lot of sense. But there's also a lot of funds that are impact driven, and even if they want to make, of course, the return on the investment, and that's the goal for all of us. They also have something more on top, right? That is making something also that's better for the world and where we live, for the people. And I think that's what we do. And there's a lot of support from Europe. So there are the ESDR kind of financial instruments, loans, for example, that you can get, that they support you and all our investors. I mean, we have strategic investors, we have impact investors, and we have financial investors. So all of them understood that doing good and doing business can totally go hand by hand.
How do you avoid falling into the corporations of today, that when you start getting big, you kind of only care about the shareholders? So what I'm going to is everybody starts with a mission. Everybody starts with good heart, or at least the majority, right? So all the big companies that you see today, they start with a good heart, thinking of long term, what they want, what do they want to achieve for humanity, for themselves, and always the good. But it comes to a moment where there's so much money and they're so big, you feel that shift between, no, let's make just the shareholders happy, and everything that we do is just to get more control, be bigger, be bigger.
Well, it's a solution. Find the shareholders that agree with your mission. It's not a one-side business, right? It's not the shareholders look for the businesses. I also need to make sure that the people that drive next to me, they will not be the pilot, they will be the co-pilot, but the co-pilots need to agree the same destination. We're going together, hand by hand. So that's key. And if we choose someone, I choose someone that do believe on our mission, on our vision, on our goals. And if they at one point do not decide, they don't agree, then is when there's the moment to say, okay, you were great until here. After that, we're not seeing it the same. And then there's probably changes in management, changement in the board, changement in the company. And I think that's key. And you as the CEO of a company, you need to have it like water clear. You say that in English? Like water clear, like crystal clear.
Yeah, crystal clear.
Crystal clear. And you need to be crystal clear that where are you going, why are you doing it, and how are you going to reach there, right? And I think that's as important to know that we're going to make it work. We're going to be a profitable business. We're going to make it work, and we're becoming a profitable business. But we're doing it in a certain way, in that we believe it's the correct way to do it.
So that's interesting, because all the conversations you see online for the big CEOs and everything, they all focus a lot about how important their team is, meaning their employees and who's in the company. But you're completely right, because actually shareholders should be part of the company as well. And that's kind of being set aside. I'm just making a point, really, to making a question. But how important, I mean, if someone's starting up today, how important and how do you control who is investing? Because when you need the money, you're kind of a situation of like, well, they're willing to invest. I'm going to say yes, because if not, I'm not able to start.
Yeah, but that's critical. You need to make sure you aligned with the shareholders. And if you don't find a shareholder, just become profitable. Just cut it, do it smaller, whatever, but you don't get money from people that don't see it the same way as you. It's postponing your death.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's very important to have a clear understanding who's joining you and what are you going to do together. Shareholders are the company together with you, together with the employees. Right? Especially you have from your shareholders, you will have a board, right? A board of investments and investors. And those are the ones that are going to decide together with you the strategic decision where the company is going. Imagine if I want to go right and they want to go left. Then is when happens the moments that management changes, the board changes, then you get, one of the reasons why startups die, one of the strongest reasons is because founders disagree. And then you have disagreements with your board. Well, imagine, it doesn't make sense. You need to be very clear with who you build a company and with who are you driving the car. And I think that for me, it's been clear from the beginning, that maybe also helped by the fact that I was lucky enough to be able to choose part of our investors, right? Because they knew me and I knew them. It was not people, it was just, let's see how it works. And I've been super lucky. I think the investors we have on board in our board, they're super clear, super on point, see it exactly like us, and they've been supporting us all along the way. Of course, we sometimes will not see things alike, but it just by understanding each one point of view, and then together you see it or try to find a way that makes sense.
Gemma, you're very outspoken about women in leadership. Why is that so important to you?
It's important for me because when I started Coccoli, I had a very young kid. And I think at the time it was COVID, right? So I believe physics and stuff, people didn't care, didn't know, right? And I think there's a lot of stigma about females when they become moms, or that they're not able to build a company. Well, no one actually asked my husband if he was expecting a kid, right? Only me, because you can see it. And I think that's something that really, really makes women step back and doubt themselves. And I've always been having great female leaders also in my previous companies that were really outspoken and really supportive all along the way. And I think every woman that there's in a CEO role should make sure that 20 more come in. And a lot of females do not dare because they're worried about what men will say, what happens if they cannot manage. Of course they will. We all find a way, right? You're not going to be the first, you're not going to be the last one, you're just going to make it happen. And I think that's this mentality that we need to show, or we need to tell each other. So I'm a big, as you said, I do have talk a lot with females. I make sure I mentor a lot of female founders, and I'm a very strong believer that we can do it as good as men, and that this stigma needs to stop. And sorry, I'm going to talk more about this because this is something that really is close to my heart. If you check the VC money, right, how much money there's in the market, only 3% will go to females. And you will say, it's because less females there. Like less females will go into building something. Well, yes, let's equal the life. You're right, there's less females. But imagine 100 men and 100 females, both of them raising cash. Only 20% of this money will go to the female. Not because the ideas are worse, not because we're not as smart, just because there's a bias. There's a bias in the spreadsheets, and they need to understand that this is happening. So we need legislations, we need support, and we need to make sure that there's an understanding that females need to build companies more in order for us to support each other. And I've been in the rooms with men, with investors, asking me questions like, how are you going to make Coccoli work with these challenges? Now my co-founder is there. They will not ask him that. They're going to ask him, hey, how are you going to make this a 100 million company? Why am I getting the questions that are much more like challenges and small? No, let's dare to be big. I want to make a 100 million company. I don't want to be a local champion. I want to be a continent champion. And I don't want to be treated different like my male. There was even once an audacity of an investor that talked to me and told me, you're missing the things that founders have. What are you talking about? Let your imagination go, what I was missing at the time. And I think that's one of the things, and you hear me and you will probably think, whoa, she's aggressive. Why am I aggressive? Why am I not just clear or ongoing or this all positive adjective that aggressive females would have in men? And I think that's something that I'm very outspoken because it needs to change.
That's funny, right? Because the example you said about being aggressive, that usually is a portrait of a good founder, a good leader. But then when you put in from the female part, then it becomes, oh no, she's difficult because she's a strong leader, right? So do you believe that it just comes from the VCs and investors that they're from another generation? Or do you think that's still ongoing now where you see new investors coming up, which might be younger, and they're supposed to not be seeing that much of a difference anymore between male and female?
I think we've been doing a lot of work, and I think there's a lot of female support between us, and I think the generation has moved much more. And I hope that when they ask my kids, imagine a CEO, they're not imagining a guy per se.
Exactly.
And I think that these things that are changing with the time, that needs time, but that we're all doing our efforts. And I think we're on the right way. I see it very positive. And this aggressiveness, right, that we talked about, I think there's ways for you as a female or as a male, right, to also to adapt it. I use a lot the humor, right, and we're going to talk about that later. But I think humor is the great way to change this perception, still being very clear and being outspoken and being very on point, but still without this perception of fear.
I heard that you're a stand-up comedian. Please tell me about this.
You want to hear a joke?
I'm not sure about it.
So it's funny. It all started a bit as my exit way for the business, right? As I said, I used to. So I come as a very impulsive and very loud, and I think that the stand-up was this excellent way to communicate the stuff without having this humorous way. So I remember, really, this is a true story. I remember my old company, and my boss was a female, told me, Gemma, I love how clear you are, but people may be a bit afraid how you say the stuff. And he told me, just smile when you talk, just smile. It was such a stupid thing, but it's true. I always was super serious, and I was like, we need to do this and this and this. Also because I was also much younger, and I was leading teams that were much older than me. So it was like, okay, I need to be seen as a serious manager. And then I started laughing. And then from laughing came, I'm just going to make this joke. Or, something happened to me, and instead of not telling the team, why not? I mean, they're my day-to-day. I'll just tell them. And then if we laugh all together 5 minutes and make fun of our mistakes, then it's going to be cool. So it started a bit like this, like me noticing I can be very funny. No, it all started a bit like me in the office and having some small jokes around. And then suddenly one day, I always loved stand-up comedy, and I went to open mics like just as a hobby. Yeah. And I went to one, and I started talking to the host, and she started talking to me and said, "Have you ever tried it?" I was like, "No." I was like, "You have probably so much content of startup life to tell that you're probably keeping for yourself. So as I told you, just do it, just start it." So I decided, why not? And I gave it a try. And one day I just decided to go behind the mics, like on the other side, and take the mic and said, I'm just gonna tell my day. And people laughed. So it seemed funny, and since then I started doing it as my scapegoat.
Funny enough, pun intended. I would think that actually that's a very good exercise for CEOs, leaders, and founders, right? Because you need to expose yourself out there. How do you see that stand-up comedy is helping you to express yourself when you're actually in that meeting in front of all the VCs and all the decision makers? Do you see a connection there? Is it helping you?
Totally. It's in also how you can express yourself. You can read your audience much better, and that helps a lot because even the jokes you tell, right? It's going to be different if I have very young people or I have people that are a bit older, or if they're Germans or they're Spaniards or they are English, right? It's complete different audience. So you need to adapt the messages you want to say to people to feel part of it and to feel themselves like they can connect to you. And that comedy helped me massively.
No.
Helped me massively to communicate, helped me massively to make sure make sure I don't take things so serious, and also to help me to have a better relationship with the team and my founders and my co-founders and my board, because they know I can also laugh about myself and about my mistakes.
Does it help you to get away with things? Like, can you have better negotiations or convince people, I'm not going to give you a promotion, you just give them a joke?
And then, not always. I think you need to know where to tell the jokes. They don't do so much. But I think it helps you for some uncomfortable questions you don't want to answer.
Building a company is pressure, constant pressure. Most founders deal with it in the usual ways. Exercise, meditation, therapy. But Gemma gets on stage and tells jokes. Tonight, she's letting us into that part of her life. And we're doing something very un-German. Hear jokes. Tomorrow morning, she's opening the doors to her home. This is where we stop talking just business and start talking about what drives the person behind it. It's time to meet the person behind the CEO.
Well, thanks for letting us into your home, Gemma.
Sure.
Businesswoman, entrepreneur, part-time comedian, mother, family, hobbies. How do you do it?
Well, I guess you need to make sure you really are able to prioritize, right? What's the most important things for you? What do you want to do? And there are things you're going to need to leave out, right? Also, I think that's the thing. It's not for everyone to make sure you want to leave your comfort zone, build this risico, right? And you know that you will have the possibility to balance your life. So I can go to the kids show at school on a Wednesday, but I'll probably also work on a Saturday, right? So there's this no 9 to 5. And I think the important thing is just for yourself to know what is really important, what the key areas you want to focus on, and then also understand that maybe you will not reach everything every day, and just be okay with it.
How do you structure your day? Because when I was in corporate, I had the 9 to 5 job. I ended up and I just felt like I couldn't do anything else, right? So how do you structure, what's your way of structuring being able to reach everything? So if it's Sunday, you're preparing next week, what is your technique to really focus on what's important?
So every day, and that's reality, I always start and think, what's the 2 things I want to do today? Mm-hmm. So there's always 2 tasks that I want to accomplish, and I have one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And then I have extra tasks, right? The ongoing things you need to add. But I have these 2 things that I have to accomplish that day, independently of what there is, what I have, what I don't have. And then once I'm going down and I'm advancing, or if one day I cannot do it because the afternoon I had to go somewhere, I know I have this task of this week that I have to finish during this week. So I'll find the time. And I think that's also it's a way that works for me to have this prioritization. But as I said, you need to know it's not a 9 to 5 job. Mm-hmm. So you will have to work in your free time. At the end of the day, your free time is also relative, because I do something I love. And it's true, I know this, like if you work in something you love, you will never have to work. No, it's still work. I know I have to work. I know I have to, it's not my hobby per se, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and that I do not mind spending the time. And everyone is very involved, like my family is very involved on the Coccoli day to day and needs.
It's the passion coming exactly because of the service that you're delivering, or is the passion coming because you're building something for yourself? And I'm asking this because sometimes like, oh, do something passionate, do something you love. But like you say, at the end of the day, it's work, right? So maybe sometimes you don't have any topic where you're passionate about or you really love it, but maybe it's more the feeling of I'm building something for myself and not necessarily focus so much about it has to be something it has to be something specific that you're passionate about. It's more the situation that you make the passion out of it.
I mean, if you build a company, you need to believe on what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
So that already starts the fact that what you will be working on is something you believe and that you care about. And of course, for me on top comes a lot the entrepreneurial. I think we talked about that before also, the fact that the role model I'm giving to my daughters, right? This idea of showing that female can do as much as men, that we can reach the same successes. And I think that's the important thing for me also. Like there's a strong personal life, and that's why also my kids are very involved. So for example, if I do an event or something, there's a high possibility, if it's in normal hours, yes, right, that my kids would come also and they will be part of me. Or if we do an exposition or if we are in press, right, for them it's the common thing. They see that I'm sometimes in a podcast, right, or I'm I don't know, doing a presentation somewhere or whatever, and they just see it. For them it's normal.
Going to the passion part, what I've seen is some people misunderstand passion with obsession, and they believe that just because they're very passionate about the product they sell, that it's going to work. But you're treating everything, or at least the entrepreneurs we're meeting in this show, it's more, you can be passionate about it, but you need to structure it correctly as an enterprise, as a business to make it work. So what kind of suggestions would you give to people regarding, between passion and being structured and being cold about it?
So I do believe that founders need to somehow be crazy, right? Because it's true, you are very passionate about something and you think all day about that part. And it's true that sometimes that may take the focus on the structure and the needs to grow. And I believe that's the reason why a lot of the companies as a startup, at one point, you need to change the founders. Because, and it's pretty common, right? You get management from the outside that are people much more thinking much bigger in terms of structure, in processes. And not always is it, so I think it's not always the same people that can do the 0 to, 50 million. It's not the same million that can do 50 to 100, right? And that's exactly the reason. I think the personalities that you need to have as a founder, because it's somehow very lonely too, right? You need to be someone that self-motivates themselves. I don't have anyone, no boss, right, that would tell me, hey, come on, let's do it. No, I want to do it because I believe so much on it and I really want to do it, right? So it's a different personality.
Yeah. What were the fears that you had to overcome?
There's a lot of the fear of, am I going to be able to do it?
Yeah.
Right? When you start something, you feel like, and that's, I think, something very female and not so much male. I guess males tend to be, and again, it is a stereotype, right? But tend to be more bold. And I think females, we tend to underestimate how much we can do. So of course, for me the question is, am I going to pull this off? Right? Am I going to be ready to start something from scratch, to get people involved, to come with me, to want to go into this adventure together? I think that. And then of course, the second part was also, my family, right? How I'm going to organize, as I said, at the beginning, also myself. My husband also is an entrepreneur himself. So it was, okay, how are we going to do it? How are we going to organize that we can both feed it at home? And I think it was a general fear of not having the stability or the 9 to 5, and how are we going to organize ourselves? But as I said, I think it's just the prioritization, organization, and it did work out. So that's,
But it kind of proves that there's no right timing for this, right? It's just because you did it at a certain time where the majority of people would not venture it. So you just had your third kid.
Yeah.
You have a comfortable job, good title, your comfortable life, and then you decide to jump into this. So, when was the moment where you said, "Yeah, I have to do it. I just need to leap, into the abyss and see what happens."
So it's true. I mean, it was a complicated time. I mean, there's never good times. I was pregnant. I was at the time working or was in my maternity leave, and then was like, okay, I started digging with the idea during that time, right? Because you always need to do that together with your job. So I had the opportunity to have some weeks to take care of the kid and think about also what I want to do, what I want to go further. And I thought that maybe it was also the kids, right? Maybe it was this idea of thinking, hey, now I have two people that are going to look up to me, and they're going to think, what do I want to teach them? No? What do I want them to be, what to think about me? And I wanted them to be proud. And then I thought, okay, if I want my kids to be proud, what would make also me proud? And that's how things started. And of course, I had fully support, right, of my family, of my husband. He was like, go, try it, do it. It's also easier if you have a support system.
Do you think that you've given up anything that you would like to go back to?
It's different. I mean, you give things up, but you win many others, right? So you give up this organization life, right? But I have much more flexibility now. For example, I give up. I don't know, maybe the stability, but I keep this passion, right, of building something I truly believe. Although in my previous companies, I always work for companies I fully believed on.
Yeah.
So that's not the case that it was, that I always like do something that was very different in that sense. But it's true that this time you do it how you think it's best. For the good and for the bad.
Yes.
Right? So for sometimes you are unsure if that's for the best, but you do what you think, how things should be done. And sometimes it's not even what my co-founders or the team would think, right? So it's a bit, yeah.
Let's talk about legacy. You've talked about sustainability, the importance of building a business that's actually doing good for the world that we live in. But for you personally, what do you want to leave behind?
I want to contribute to make this somehow better, to make this world somehow better, even if it's a very small grain of it. I just want to do something I believed I tried to improve the world, what we're leaving to our kids, and that's going further, and not making it worse.
And when will you feel that you've made it?
I think by already when it started, I think I made it. You know, like I think the fact that I dared to start and to build in and to go further, I think it's already a huge success. Of course, for me, the bigger the better. The more people we can reach to, the more people are ready to buy secondhand. This idea of democratizing is very important for me. But I think already, I think also startups need to celebrate successes, like every small success, and that's what I try to do.
I think that's the best way and the best note to finish the interview in. I fully agree with you. There's too much obsession about I need to make more. And the comment you just said, like, if you just have the courage to jump out there and actually do it, then you've already made it. So, Gemma, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
all
Osprey.
those days. It's impressive to see your courage and what you're trying to build. It's very difficult. This is something that leaders and entrepreneurs that we meet in this show, like you, they're really giving us the motivation to create this channel. So thank you so much for meeting us, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks also for coming. I think it's great to actually have podcasts like you that also show not always the bright side of entrepreneurs, but also the fears and how sometimes the darker part. But yeah, it's great. Thanks a lot.
We can't wait to see how big you get with Coccoli.
Thank you.
Thanks. Gemma's creating a new style of corporate with Coccoli, a company that actually lives by its values. And she does it with a healthy dose of humor. Because sometimes to survive the craziness of startups, you actually need to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Gemma is an example of a new generation of leaders that are rising. The leaders that will replace what we see in corporations today. Because not everything is about chasing titles on the next quarterly calls. It's not about putting your life aside or waiting for the right moment. It's about building a company actually means something.